Hey there legends, welcome to Friday Q&A. I'm going to call this the NAMM edition because obviously the summer NAMM show is going on right now and I'm sure you're all hankering for a bunch of content about that. And I'm not at NAMM. I'm sitting here in my studio in Perth, Western Australia on the other side of the planet. But if you have questions for next week, please get them in the comments below. Otherwise, we will dive straight into the questions. And the first question comes from my Facebook page asking, why am I not at NAMM? Good question. I kind of thought about it for a little bit. One of my best friends is actually over there at the moment. So if any of you guys see Troy walking around, say hi to him for me. But yeah, it's one of those things where if I want to go to the States, it's like a 16-hour flight from Sydney, and I'm like a 4.5-hour flight from Sydney. So it's close to 24 hours total travel time. And yeah, it's just a massive investment of time and money that I simply just couldn't afford at this stage. But I would really like to make it over there for next year. So I'm making some kind of plans to do that. So let's say that NAMM 2020, I will do my best to be there. I'm seeing all the videos pop up on YouTube and all the social media posts, and so many people on YouTube that I follow and really respect are there. So more than anything, I mean, I'm not super interested in like the gear side of things. It would just be cool to go and meet so many people over there, and it's been a few years since I've been to the States and done any playing, so I kind of miss it. And I just love to go there and eat a bunch of burgers, eat some hot wings, and look at some guitar gear, talk to some people. So hopefully it'll happen next year. On that note, somebody was asking me about the Suhr PT15, which was just announced the other day. I think the idea is that it is a mini 3-channel head. It's all tube, but it's got Suhr's reactive load built into it, and you can load your own IRs. I'm going to make a call right now and say that this is going to be like the thing for 2019. Manufacturers scrambling to have their tube heads with built-in reactive loads and IRs and digital effects and things like that. I know there's been a few other products announced very similar to that. I'd obviously love to try that stuff. Suhr make great stuff. Every Suhr guitar I've played has sounded fantastic and been made pretty well, and I've never tried one of their amplifiers in the flesh, but I would really like to. So I have no idea if this is even possible of happening, but yeah, I would love to try it. You know, Pete made it sound great, and he makes everything sound great, and I'm sure it's really cool. But that's my prediction for 2019. It's going to be small heads with reactive loads and built-in IRs, which is kind of, I saw somebody on might have been the Fractal forum said it's kind of like a VHS DVD player combo, which really made me laugh. So yeah, I bet you that'll be the hip thing this year. So ragdoll cats. My cats aren't ragdolls. The big guy is, we suspect he's actually a bit of a mongrel, but that he is part Maine Coon, and they are famous for being huge cats. There is a breeder here, actually, and they have some purebreds, and man, they have this one cat that is literally the biggest cat I have ever seen in my life. It's like twice the size of my cat. And the other one that you saw in last week's video is actually that big cat's daughter. So yeah, they're kind of mongrels, but there's some Maine Coon, you know, breed in there. So I don't have the ragdolls, but our drummer Cam did have a ragdoll cat for years and years. And essentially, when we were trying to come up with names for the band, we went through and we had this like giant list, and we were all like, And one day he was like, I've got it. Think about it. Ragdoll just makes sense. We're like furry looking guys. They're furry cats. Kind of suits the aesthetic. And it was the first name that I had heard where it was like, yeah, that's pretty good. It's it's not the worst band name I'd ever heard. And believe me, I'd heard some bad ones up to that point. So we just ran with it. And they're glorious cats. I know if you go to ragdoll.com, there's a breeder in the States. And we've offered a few times basically to buy that website, and the guy was like, oh, you can have the website when you buy all the cats. So we were like, well, come on, give us a price, let us know, because having ragdoll.com would be pretty handy. But if you do look that up, it's going to be a cat breeder and not a hard rock band. But that's actually the inspiration. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with Aerosmith, which anytime we play in the States, somebody's like, goddamn Aerosmith! And it's like, nah man, it's named after a cat. It's nowhere near that cool. It's nowhere near that rock and roll. I totally expected this, and you guys delivered in spades. I did a video with the Kemper profiling app. Basically, I haven't gone and bought a Kemper. That's a demo video that I did for the good folk at Mega Music here in Perth. who loan me a bunch of stuff so that I can make content with it. And a lot of the time it's content that you guys have been requesting, and heaps of you guys request Kemper videos, so I did a Kemper video. There will be at least one more video coming out in the next couple of weeks on just how to use a few things and dial in some tones. But the whole Axe FX3 versus Kemper thing, if you go and watch the end of my Kemper video, I kind of lay it out, and you know, the Axe is still here. It's not going anywhere for what I like to do. It's how I find my sound these days, and that's all that's really important to me. But I will do another video, I guess, because I've tried the Line 6 HX Stomp, the Kemper, the Atomic Amplifier. Obviously, I've got the Fractal stuff here, the Mua GE200. I'm going to try to do a little roundup and hopefully give you guys some ideas of basically what I think about everything and why I still use the Fractal stuff. So that will be coming. Yeah, like, don't freak out about stuff. You know, just because I demo something doesn't mean that I'm endorsing it or using it. You'll get a pretty good idea of the stuff that I actually think is good by the number of videos I do about it. So yeah, that's the vibe with the Kemper vs. Axe thing. Whatever you want, it doesn't matter. Go and make some music, as I always say. Did I see the Mr. Big Extreme Tour in Australia recently? I didn't. I missed it. I was playing. I think when that show got announced, we'd already been booked for like a Mindsight gig somewhere up north. And yeah, just, of course, it happened to fall on the same weekend. I love Paul Gilbert, and I love his 80s stuff, but I have to say, nowadays, when I listen to Nuno Betancourt play, he just gives me so much more of a vibe. Like, don't get me wrong, love Paul, love everything he does, but there's just something about the sort of swagger that Nuno has. He's such a cool guitar player and such a damn good songwriter and singer as well, so I was actually more pumped to see Nuno, so hopefully I'll be able to get to see that at some point. But I do love Mr. Big as well. It's just one of those things where, you know, Porno Graffiti was one of the first albums I ever bought, and I loved it at the time, then didn't listen to it for ages, and then now when I listen to it now, it's like, damn, that guy was good, and still is. So, actually, I have seen Nuno live. We played a festival with them, and a bunch of their gear broke, so they played for like 35, 40 minutes, but he came out and just like dominated, and then I think his amps weren't working, and they all walked off stage. So I would like to see the full show at some point. Surprised there's no Ernie Ball Music Man guitars in my arsenal. Yeah, that's a thing I never really got into, the Music Man thing. I've played the Petrucci guitars. One of my students had one. Amazing instrument with the piezo and everything. It was, yeah, super sweet. Another guy that I know has a Luke, and I really, really liked that. And I mean, I've got, I don't know if you can see it, it's sort of hanging in there. I do have a PV Wolfgang, and that's my kind of, you know, Eddie did the Wolfgang with EBMM, and then that became, what, the Axis or something. So that's kind of my take on an Axis. And yeah, I like Ernie Ball stuff, but for me, if I want to play like a super stratty guitar, I'm going to want to play a Strat. If I want to play like a sort of meaty, chunky guitar, then I'm going to play like a Gibson or a PRS. If I'm going to play like a super strat thing, I'm going to want to play an Ibanez. So for me, they just kind of sit in that realm where they've never been super desirable for me, but they are pretty damn good guitars. Any collaborations I'd love to do on YouTube? Yeah, heaps. I know last week we mentioned Ryan from Plague Scythe Studios. We had a really brief chat about that over the week and had some funny ideas, so maybe that'll happen at some point. Someone I would love to do some video stuff with, but I expect it would mean I would have to actually like go to LA to do it, would be Michael Nielsen, because I love his videos. Just everything about his tones, his studio, like his sense of humor, the type of guitar playing he likes, and the type of stuff he does really seems like, I just feel like we would get on. I'd like to buy that guy a drink or something and talk shit for hours, which I'm sure he'd be down for. So yeah, there's quite a few other people as well off the top of my head. I'd love to do something with Rocco, but what am I going to do? That guy's such an amazing player. I always feel it's like, I got nothing to contribute in this. I would just want to listen to him play guitar. So, but you never know. That might be a fun thing. And yeah, a bunch of guitar players. If anyone wants to collaborate on anything, just get in touch with me. with me. There are some things I'm working on at the moment, but it would be cool to hear from other instrumentalists or other guitar players. You know, if you want me to play a solo on your song that you're releasing, just let me know. I'll do it. It's so easy for me to do. And yeah, if anyone's got any ideas, hit me up and let's make this happen in 2019. The video tour of your gear room soon. I promise. I get this question every week, and I will do something really soon once I am organized. I've just got a bunch of other stuff which is higher on the agenda at the moment. So hopefully at some point this year I'll get around to the whole studio tour thing. If you want some tips and tricks for using the Axe effects through a cab, I have got a video where I'm using my AX8 and a power amp through a cab, and all the tips and tricks are basically in there. So go and check that out if you want some extra guidance for using the Axe effects with an amp and cab. I'll have to revisit that using the Axe FX 3 because it does have some extra functionality, which I think really helps with a cab. So that video, again, that's another one that I hope to do sooner rather than later. My favorite speakers. This is a good question. I'm less inclined to say like, hey, this is my favorite speaker, like a generic model, as I would have like actual like physical favorite speakers. I know in my Mesa 212, I've got a vintage 30 in there, and one of them sounds a lot better than the other one, so I use that one all the time. Same thing in my Marshall 412 with greenbacks. I think it's like the top right speaker is the best sounding one. That particular greenback sounds really good. In another one of my Marshalls, it's like there's a particular 75 watt speaker which sounds a lot better than the other ones. So for me, it's less about the actual speaker model and the brand as it is the actual like tone of the particular speaker. But having said that, I know if I can get my hands on some UK-made Celestion vintage 30s or greenbacks, I'm going to have a good gig. Or T75s. I really like Celestions. I've got some of the WGS stuff, which is really cool. It's sort of like a different flavor that I'm slowly warming up to. But yeah, in a pinch, any of those speakers, I really don't care too much because now I don't really play through a real cab. I just use impulses and my Axe effects. So that's like one extra thing that's eliminated that I have to worry about at gigs. Any tips for getting a heavy yet smooth distortion on the Axe effects? I've got a couple of videos which cover sort of similar things, but my general rule for this is be really careful with the presence control on a lot of models because they can make it sound really fizzy, and then bring the high cut parameter in the cab block down, as well as choose a smooth sounding impulse. Like if you're shooting, you know, a speaker right on the cone, there's going to be a certain amount of fizz that you just can't remove. So find an IR that sounds smooth, go really easy on the treble and the presence, crank the mids, and use the high cut in the cab block. Like bring it down beyond 6K, like try it at 5K or 5.5K, and you will get a much smoother kind of sound, especially if you're going for lead sounds. And also try some compression after the amp because that can really help even out the dynamics. Using the Axe effects as an interface is really easy. It does audio over USB, so if you were using a plugin like Reaxis, load up Reaxis in your DAW, and then with your Axe effects set as your interface, you're going to use, I think it's input 5, so basically channels 5 and 6 over USB audio in the Axe effects transmit the DI signal, so the unaffected signal goes straight into your DAW, load up Reaxis, play a bunch of guitar, have a bunch of fun. The wiki and the manual also explain this, so I don't feel like I really need to go into depth, but I do have a video that's coming up about Axe effects recording tips and tricks, and it's going to cover setup, it's also going to cover reamping, and it's also going to cover stuff like, you know, how you should go about like tracking with different impulses and different amps and different tones. Best way to use a fuzz pedal into a clean amp or a dirty amp. From memory, I have a video demoing my custom Anarchy Audio fuzz that I had made. I'll put a link to that in the video description when I'm running it into a crunchy amp and into a clean amp. There is also a really old video on my channel with the Anarchy Audio Vagiant, which is a hilariously named pedal, but running it into a clean amp and a dirty amp. I'll post a link to that as well. For me, running a fuzz into a crunchy amp or a dirty amp essentially gives you like a really smooth synth-like kind of tone just because you're clipping the signal so much and compressing it, taking out all the dynamics, which is kind of fun. Whereas if you want a fuzz that cleans up, something like a germanium fuzz into a clean amp can be really cool for that kind of 60s thing. So to me, fuzz into a clean amp always has that kind of gnarly, ratty sort of thing going on in the top end, whereas into a dirty amp, it just sounds like monstrous, and you know, it's great for stoner rock stuff. So I'll put those video links up and you guys can go check it out. If my life was a movie, what would my training montage be? You mentioned Fire and Ice by Malmsteen, which is a great song and a great album. I really like that one. Oh man, that's quite funny. If my life was a movie, is there a movie about a guy who just sits around in a room, drinking coffee, playing guitar? It'd be a pretty boring movie. Every now and then he goes on tour. Every now and then he leaves the house and goes to the gym. He has a big fat cat. What would my training montage be? Maybe something like this. This week's lick of the week is less a lick and more an approach or an exercise. It's an octave displacement idea. So what we're going to do is take the natural minor scale in A. If you don't know that, start on the low string. We're just going to take an octave worth of it, and it's 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8, 5, 7. The notes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then A again, really easy to remember. So we can play the scale like that, and it's pretty vanilla and pretty boring, or what we can do is, any of those notes we can choose to play an octave higher. For example, like this, the first three notes, I could play A and B on the low string, and then I could play C, which is an octave higher, so the 5th fret on the G string, and I get this. Rather than this, I get this. Or I could play the B on the high string and the C on the low string, which would sound like this. Alright, that's pretty cool. What if we take the same approach onto the next string and we play D and E, but then we play a high, sorry, we play D and E and then we play a high F. So it would be something like this, which is pretty cool. So we've got... And then I can play G and A on the next string and then play a high B. So that's pretty cool. The only thing about it is it's like using the whole natural minor scale. There's a really weird octave between, interval, not an octave, between these two notes. So if we leave that F note out and instead we play what some might call the hexatonic minor in A, so it's the natural minor without the 6th degree, it would look like this. I also call this the Eric Johnson scale because he uses this all the time. And I use it all the time as well, but I'm not as good at guitar as Eric Johnson. So what we can do is instead of playing D and E, we want to break that pattern up a little bit. Otherwise it sounds too predictable as well. So we can go A, B as the low notes and then a high C. Then we'll play D, 5th fret on the A string, and then we'll play E, 5th fret on the B string. The way I'm picking this as well, I'll bring my hand up here. I didn't think this camera angle out very well, did I? I'm playing the low notes with my pick, and then I'm hybrid picking with my middle finger. So, oh, that was cool. So that's sort of the picking idea there. You can just alternate pick it all if you prefer. And then we can play G, A, and B the same way we did before. So we get this. Man, this is a fiddly one. So that's the idea. Rather than this, we get this. Which again sort of has that EJ Steve Morse kind of sound about it. So you can then run that in reverse and you got a really great hybrid picking exercise like so. Something like that. Anyway, I'll add some delay. I'll also try and get my, let's do this. So there you go, that's the picking, that's the fingering. You can also use hammer-ons and pull-offs if you like for this, like so. And that's pretty much the lick. If you play it on the neck pickup with a bit of delay like I am at the moment, you get this.
Yikes!